Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Let's All Be the Change. I'm your host, David Tier. And as I do every Saturday, I'm featuring another great invention throughout history. I picked these at random from a book I have at home on 1001 Greatest Inventions of All Time. And since today's Pi Day, I suppose it's appropriate that the one I picked for today is a mathematical invention. Matter of fact, a very important one, namely our familiar Hindu-Arabic numeral system, which we all use pretty much universally now. Just the decimal digits 0 through 9 shown on the top. Anyway, let's begin. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the history of Hindu-Arabic numerals. I guess I'll just read this verbatim what I wrote here. So our familiar system of 10 decimal digits is a variant of the Hindu-Arabic numeral system. This system has a long history and spread to various parts of the world at various times. Some of those forms are shown below, our familiar one on top. Yeah, so our familiar system was from Europe, but the others were from other parts of the world. So Hindu-Arabic numerals were first used in India sometime between the 1st and 4th century. We don't know exactly when. By the 9th century, they spread to the Middle East, where they were adapted to be used with fractions and popularized by some great mathematicians like Al-Khwarizmi and Al-Kindi, who wrote texts about him. I think Al-Khwarizmi's text was from 825 and Al-Kindi from 830. And then they finally spread to Europe during the 13th century after being described and popularized by Fibonacci in his text Liberace in 1202. What I think is kind of interesting is Fibonacci is mainly known for Fibonacci numbers, the Fibonacci sequence. They're fascinating sequence of numbers, no doubt. Very active variable number theory still even today. But I think what was probably even a more groundbreaking accomplishment by Fibonacci was his text Liberace, because with that text he really introduced the Hindu-Arabic number system, which we use today, to Europe. And Europe was very much wrapped up in the Dark Ages at that time, the Middle Ages, also known as the Dark Ages. And I think it was in part his text that kind of helped Europe get out of them eventually. Um, I'll just say the rest of what I say here. Hindu-Arabic numerals were one of the few widely used place value systems, as opposed to the much more cumbersome face value systems previously in widespread use, such as Egyptian, Hebrew, Greek, and Roman numerals. So I think the great advantage that Hindu-Arabic numerals had in Europe once they were introduced was they were a place value system. I mean, the fact they were base 10 isn't really that important, I think. And maybe we like base 10 because we have 10 fingers. It's just easy to work with. There's actually probably better bases than base 10, like base 12. For a while, I think there are some people who kind of have proposed we switch to base 12, maybe base 6 or base 60. But that's not really the important thing about the Hindu-Arabic numeral system. The base. What's more important is its place value, which means that each number, each digit doesn't always represent the same number. It depends on where it's placed. And if it's in the rightmost digit, it represents units. The one to the left, that tens, hundreds, thousands, so on. And the advantage of having a system like this is it makes it much easier to do arithmetic. As a matter of fact, that was another thing that Fibonacci introduced how to do in his Liberace. He gave us all the rules for doing the arithmetic we're all familiar with and with decimal numbers like um, you know addition, subtraction, where you just go digit by digit, and I think also shift and add, multiplication, and long division. All stuff we learn in school by fourth or fifth grade, hopefully. Um, but there was no simple system for doing this. I mean, I think before Hindu-Arabic numerals were introduced in Europe, most of the people in Europe were using Roman numerals. And Roman numerals are very, very difficult to use, to do arithmetic with. They're just not a practical system. And none of the face value systems are. And, I think the Western world was mostly using face valued systems ever since ancient times. I mean, starting with the ancient Egyptians, their hieroglyphs were another face value system. And then the ancient Greeks and the Hebrews and the Romans, they all used other face value systems. There were a few exceptions. I mean, Indo-Arabic numerals were actually not the first place value systems to be used. I think the first were Babylonian numerals around 2000 BC. And the Babylonians were pretty great mathematicians. I think they were among the greatest of the ancient mathematicians. And I think a big reason for that was they also used a place value system. As a matter of fact, they used a base 60 system, sexagesimal. And I think it would have been a really good system, except that they didn't have a symbol for zero. A big problem, I can't emphasize this enough, but a big problem with math in the West until Fibonacci was they didn't have a symbol for zero. They didn't even have the concept of the number zero. And without zero, you're kind of screwed. Zero is really really important. And I think once we had zero as a number, I think that really was a big revolution in the history of math. And the Babylonians didn't use a symbol for zero, even though they had a place value system. And the problem with that was they would just leave it as a blank, and then sometimes they wouldn't know there was a blank, so they would misread numbers with their system. There was another civilization. Unfortunately, they died out, but the Mayans from Central America used. They had the base 20 system that did have a symbol for zero, and it was a place value system. And I think it worked pretty well for them. I mean, they used it with their calendar, and they used it to count a lot of other stuff. I think the problem with their system was it inconsistently used base 20. I mean, for their calendar at least, they used the units went up to 20. The 20s went up to 360 instead of 400. I guess they wanted to make it close to 365 since it's 365 days in a year. The problem with that is again it makes it hard to do arithmetic if you don't have a constant base. So our system's very convenient. My only suggestion is that one of these days we switch to a different base. And I probably won't be alive to see, another base being widespread use, but I'm guessing that in another 200 years or so, we won't be using base 10 anymore. We'll probably be using one of base 6, 12, or 60. I think most likely base 12. I think, the advantage of base 12, I might as well tell you right now. 12 has more factors than 10. The only non-trivial factors of 10 are 2 and 5, whereas 12 has four of them, 2, 3, 4, and 6. It makes division a lot easier. Multiplication and division, actually. So anyway. So I guess that concludes my video for today, my feature on the Hindu-Arabic numeral system. So thank you for watching. Keep thinking, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.